Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, where we help new and beginning teachers navigate through those crazy first years of teaching so you can maintain your sanity and personal life. Here's your host, Kim Laprie.
Welcome to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast, episode number 12. I'm your host, Kim Laprie from teachersneedteachers.com, which is a coaching and community site for new and beginning teachers who don't want to just survive those first few years, but actually thrive. I really appreciate you coming out and hanging out with me today. I think you're going to love this particular episode because I have an amazing guest, Rob Fulk, who is the principal at Marion C. Moore School in Louisville, Kentucky, which is a huge and diverse school with a thriving academy model. Rob and I have a very open and honest conversation about the assumptions people make about the purpose of school, the importance of offering students more than just a Euro-centric education, and how to frame your answers to interview questions. Here's my conversation with Rob. Rob, thank you for coming on to the podcast. And I was wondering if you could tell my listeners a little bit about your teaching experience and how you came to your current position.
Sure. So I started in education about 15 years ago as a self-contained emotional behavior disorder teacher. I taught English, social studies, and the occasional science course to high school students out in Oldham County here in Kentucky. I did that for 3 years at a high school, North Oldham High School. And then I moved to the alternative school in the district, got invited to go over there, which was a really cool experience in that the way that county, Oldham County, looked at alternative school is they went out and recruited people that they thought would fit best with the student clientele there. So I got recruited to go out there, went out there for 3 years. While I did that, I coached wrestling. I was a head wrestling coach there at North Oldham, built a program there, and decided I wanted to go into administration. And in my 7th year, I interviewed for a job about 85 minutes away from my home in a place called New Haven, which was a K-8 school. Mm-hmm. I went out there as an assistant principal. It was a neat experience in that the principal had just been hired. It was his first year as a principal, my first year as an AP. Our staff actually met us. About 10 of them, we were both wrestling each other in the hallway because we had been former wrestling coaches. So that was kind of like, hey, we're the principals here. Sorry about that. But it was awesome. We were out in the middle of nowhere there on the LaRue County and Nelson County line, serving a very rural, very impoverished population. And it was a heck of a lot of fun. Did that for a year and then had an opportunity to apply for a principalship closer to my house in Bullitt County at Bullitt Lick Middle School. For some unforeseen reason, they saw some promise in me and they decided to pick me up. And I was the principal for there for 3 years and some change. We were a highly impoverished suburban school. It was kind of weird. We were suburban, but also had a rural component because our reside area was pretty large. Mm-hmm. Went from there, decided to start pursuing other opportunities. I thought maybe, I might want to be a superintendent. So at the ripe age of 33, I applied for superintendency. Oh, wow. Got through the screening process, got through the application phase, ended up doing 4 interviews and got offered the position. But me and the board couldn't come to an agreement on salary. So I ended up walking away from that. But, it's one of those things when you look at a job and you've kind of had that idea, all right, I'm ready to move on. So then I said, okay, so what's my next opportunity? And the superintendent in Bullitt County came to me and talked to me about one of the high school openings that was out there. So I decided to do that and applied for that position, went and became the principal of North Bullitt High School. I was there 1 year and then got invited to be a chief academic officer, assistant superintendent in Trimble County. They wanted me to come up there. They had a brand new superintendent. He recruited me up there to build some systems with him, and we did that. And I told him there was really only one job that I would leave his district for, and that was actually the place I'm currently at now, which is Moore, Marion C. Moore School, which is a couple minutes from my house. High likelihood my kids go here, and it's in my backyard, right. And it's a 612 school. So I applied for that and long story short, managed to make that happen. And I've been here now going into my third year and third principalship here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've had quite the experiences there that I'm sure prepared you for where you're at now and all of the challenges and advantages of the school that you're at. Could you tell us a little bit more about, the demographic of the community that Marion Seymour is in?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a reside school, which means we serve any kid that walks through our door that lives in our reside boundary. And our reside boundary is a couple of neighborhoods here in Louisville, Kentucky. We serve Highview, we serve a little bit of Newburgh, and then we have a satellite reside in downtown Louisville in the 7th to Taylor Boulevard corridor. We are projected over 2,200 students next year. We ended this year with 2,172. Mm-hmm. We are grades 6 through 12. So we have 7 grade levels on campus. We are the largest school in the city of Louisville, public or private, traditional school, as far as classification. Mm-hmm. We are about 85% free reduced lunch. We move back and forth in that. We are an urban school. Our demographics are actually really cool, and it's one of the neatest things about our building. We're about a third African American, a third Caucasian, and a third Hispanic Latino. Mm-hmm. And we represent 44 different countries of origin on campus. Wow. I have about just shy of 18% ESL students, and then just about 18% special education students. So we're a very rich, very vibrant, very diverse community out here, which is one of the biggest draws to our school. When we look at our area, Louisville is pretty popping as far as industry and employers. We've got the UPS hub here. We've got Humana. We've got a lot of corporations that have come into our area. So it's a pretty rich job market here in the past half decade or so. Mm-hmm. And we have a very progressive city in terms of our mayor and our metro council. They lean very towards progressive politics and being a very inclusive city, which is, I'm born and raised in Louisville. I will never leave Louisville. Love mm-hmm. traveling, but this place is, we like to say a lot, it's one of the biggest small towns in America. I mean, we've got, just shy of 1 million people in the whole city, and we have big city problems, but, you drive 10 minutes and you can be out where there are horses and cows and stuff like that. So it's right. It's a really cool environment here.
Now, from listening to all the schools that you've taught at up until here, you've taught at a lot of different types of areas. So you went from, more of like rural and suburban to urban. And so how do the problems that occur at a smaller scale, like an rural or suburban, compare to what some of the challenges that you face at your school because of it's in an urban area?
Sure. So there's one cross-cutting issue that I've seen in all of the schools that I've been in, and that is the impact of poverty. Poverty cross-cutting between both rural, suburban, and urban environments, and addressing that and having a very strong background in understanding students that come from less privileged environments is important. And that looks differently whether or not you're in a rural school, a suburban school, or an urban school. While poverty may feel the same, it does look differently depending on the environment that you come from. And that's been a big focus in my career, is working with students that don't necessarily come from advantages and come from privileges, and getting them to a level where we can truly say that we offer an equitable education. One of the biggest differences coming from rural to suburban to urban, in an urban environment, equity is so much more prominent, especially when you look at the diversity of the student clientele that we have. Many times I think not many times, I just flat out think a lot of times we do a disservice to a lot of urban kids that don't come from a traditionally Euro-centric or Caucasian life experience, and try to force them into the mold and the experience of the Euro-centric and Caucasian life experience, when there is such a much more rich and diverse resources out there and ways to look at teaching students. So right. That's been one of the biggest things coming to an urban environment. And then the second one too is outside of my current position, I've had very little experience with ESL, ELL students. That was a big learning curve coming here when I have 44 countries of origin on campus, and our ESL population is basically 1 in 5 students. And one of the interesting things that we've found here is our ESL communities, if they are new to the area, refugee or new placement or new move-ins, typically they will go to our newcomer academy, which is outstanding. However, families can decide to waive services. And we found in some of our ESL communities that we serve here at Moore that are more insular or more have been placed in the same area or live in the same area, that we get a reputation of doing right by their students and doing well by them. So they forego going to newcomer and come directly to us, which is awesome, but also presents a new set of issues in that this student is brand new to English. So we've really had to adapt and learn a lot in the last couple of years here with that population.
And the responsibility then of having them become, some English or proficient in English is then solely put on your school then if they're refusing services.
Yeah, solely put on our school in that we're the primary service provider. We have a pretty doggone awesome ESL department in our district. Dr. Beardsley over there and his team are some of the most supportive folks that I've had the fortunates to work with in my career. They get it, and they have a passion for our ESL communities. And when we have a need, they're responsive to it. So, for example, 2 years ago, we knew we needed to add about 4 ESL teachers, and we present the problem to the ESL department, and they go and find the money tree and make it happen. And then I have ESL positions that I can now, that I was able to fill, which is really nice when you have an environment where that is a focus. And central office really looks as being the support mechanism to make schools successful.
And it's so important. And I'm glad to hear that you have such a robust ESL department, because I'm sure you've noticed this. A lot of times these students are brilliant in their own language, but they struggle to, maybe do calculus in English as opposed to their native language. And so trying to kind of bridge that gap so they can still get the same amount of rigor and access the material, even though they're missing the language component. I'm sure that your department is doing really well with that.
Yeah, I tell you, one of the most frustrating things there is like when we look at the metrics we use to judge schools. Here in Kentucky, we determine priority, which are now comprehensive schools, the bottom 5% that are reported to the federal government. We determine that at high school. The ACT is a huge component of that. And 20% to 30% of my junior class are ESL students that are brilliant. And they're forced to take a test in English. And I'll give you an example. I had a young lady 2 years ago who was accepted to Ivy League universities and was just one of the most rock star kids I had ever encountered. She had to translate the ACT to French in her mind and then back into English, and she ran out of time on it, even with, the paltry accommodations that we give those students. And then we judge a school based off of their results on that standardized test when the deck is stacked and the playing field isn't level to begin with. And that's frustration that I have about education, because we do have just some amazingly brilliant students. And we just, in many instances, we tell them, we're here to support you. We're here to immerse you. We're here to help you. But, oh, by the way, you've got to take this test. And sorry, it's in English, and your college admission mostly depends on it.
Right.
So that's frustrating.
I know this could be a very involved answer. So I want you to pick maybe like 2 to 3 programs in your school that make it unique, and it makes it so that families are basically fighting to get into your school.
Okay. So the first one I'll highlight is on the high school side. We recently became an academy model school. One of the things we noticed a couple years ago was I coming from the background in county schools, there's just so many options available to kids in county schools. You usually have a lot of different career and technical education pathways. You usually got an area technology center you can go to. There's just a lot of options. When I came to Moore, we had this medical program on the high school side, which was rocking and rolling. But if you didn't want to do medical, then you just did traditional school. And that's okay. But we want to give kids, more options and more preparation for the future. So we adopted a whole host of CTE pathways en masse. We moved 99% of our teachers' classrooms. We restructured our whole way we did our administrative layout of the building and structure to the high school side 2 years ago, and went to the academy model. And we started offering things outside of medical. We started offering urban agriculture. We started offering a culinary arts program. We started offering a business support program, a civil engineering pathway, an electrical trades pathway, and just basically said, we want to find a home for every kid here. We've got so many offerings now. We can find something you're interested in. And then the idea being that you then walk out with some relevant skills. So if you want to go to college, great. You've got a skill set that you can go to college. But if you want to go directly into the trades, great. You can go and do that. We negotiated a partnership with the local union, IBEW, national union, for our electrical kids. They get comped out of a year of their apprenticeship by doing our program here as high school students. So they get to go out and be job ready, making decent, good, livable wage money in a trade where they can take their tools and travel across the nation. So that's one of the first things that we really try to push and highlight to our families. The second one is on our middle school side, we have a lot of opportunities to experience all the things we have on our high school in-house. So you get to dabble in some of the civil engineering stuff, do some of the biomedical stuff, do some of the medical stuff, do some of the culinary stuff, and dabble and kind of see some of those interests and build some of that interest up before you even walk over to the high school side. We're very proud that for the last 2 years, we've had a 90% retention rate for our middle school students to stay with us in high school. And we're a choice district at high school, meaning we have magnet programs in Louisville. We have selective enrollment programs, and 90% of our kids plus for the last 2 years have chosen to stay with us. Mm-hmm. So we're exceptionally proud of that. And then the third thing I'd highlight is the philosophy we run here for our students is we want a home for every kid, and we want a kid to find something that they're interested in, and then we will support it. So in the last 2 years, we have added over 40 clubs and activities or sports, ranging from your traditional sports, like we're adding girls lacrosse next year, to gay and lesbian, bisexual, gay straight alliance, to our cultural dialoguers program, to Magic the Gathering, to you name it. If we've got kids interested, we will find a staff member that will sponsor it and then give them a place and a space to feel like they're involved in their school.
I really love the trade system that you have, the academy system that you have, because I love that there isn't the assumption that every student wants or needs to go to college, especially considering how much it costs now. I think that we've placed so much emphasis on kids just going to college that we've forgotten that there are really well-paying trade jobs that a lot of these kids would do great in, and they would probably not do so well in college anyway and waste all that money.
No, you hit the head on the nail. We've been telling a generation of kids the wrong thing, and I was part of that generation where it was you had to go to college to be successful, and it's disrespectful, one, to our trades, and also, two, when we look at as a nation, we have we can't fill the skilled trades right now because there aren't enough applicants. One of my best friends is a foreman, and he's an electrical foreman, and that's really where I came to picking electrical. Besides our student interest and our community need, we would sit on my porch and he'd sit there and he'd be like, man, I can't find apprentices. Like, where are they at? They're not out there. Nobody wants to do it. And I'm like, well, how much do these guys make? And he told me, these starting apprentices making between 18 and 22 an hour.
Oh, wow.
You're a 19-year-old kid. I mean, That's huge. That's a life right there. And then if you're carrying your journeyman's license, you can travel across the United States. You can even travel across the world. You have tools, we'll travel. So you hit the head on nail. We've been telling kids the wrong thing for years. What we need to do is we need to preach to kids that you need to have a diverse skill set that allows you to have a rich and relevant life experience where you can make connections with people, broaden your community, be an informed citizen, and do something. Do something. If it's college, great. If it's a trade, great. If it's the military, great. Whatever it may be, let's do something once high school is done.
And not be looked down upon because you didn't go the college route. Do something that you can be proud of. So these kids who are doing something that's alternative to college, they can still feel like they're being a contributing citizen, to our country, and not feel that they're being less than because they didn't go to college.
That's right. I don't know when we decided as a country that there was something wrong about doing the trades, but that was a mistake. I mean, my grandfather worked a farm for his entire life, and when he wasn't on the farm, he was working at the distillery, and that man made a wonderful life for himself and for his family. And there's absolutely nothing to look down upon there for. I mean, heck, he didn't carry, $100,000 in debt that most of us are now once we get a college degree.
And not only that, if you think about all the people who get a major and they don't do anything with that major later on.
That's right. That's right.
When you had mentioned that you have middle and high school under one campus, I kind of sat there and it blew my mind just trying to picture how this works out. So just out of curiosity, how many staff members do you have, and certificated staff members?
Certificated about 170. I've got about 239. I think it's 239 as of today on payroll. And when you look at frontline teaching staff, we're at just above 170.
And so when they meet together, like in PLCs or in departments, about how many people are we talking about per PLC? Like how does that work during that time when they meet and collaborate? And
so we really try to chunk out things so that we don't have giant meetings that become useless. I'm not a huge proponent of faculty meetings. I never have been. I think we had maybe 4 or 5 last year because there's just not a lot of reasons for all of us to come into one room and hear something that I can't put out over email, So we do on the middle school side, they have a couple different teaming opportunities. The first one is the grade level team, and that is, concern specific to 6th grade, concern specific to 7th grade. The second option there is the actual team. So we do teaming on the middle school. So that's going to be all your core content teachers, usually a special education teacher, or ESL teacher assigned to that core content team. Then we break out to the next level of PLCs, and we do those usually by grade level, sometimes by the whole side of the building. So for example, my middle school 8th grade language arts teachers, there'll be 3 core content, 1 special ed in that PLC. They will have support then from one of our resource teachers, maybe 2 of them. Sometimes they will come together as an entire middle school, and that looks like about 15 of them. On the high school side, we do it by academy. So we do the Health Science Academy meeting, Freshman Academy meeting, Community Academy, and STEM Academy. And those are about 15 to 18 teachers. And then they can break out by PLCs by same content area. So it might be all my Algebra 2 teachers, 4 or 5 of those teaching Algebra 2, or the whole department, for Math 15. And then sometimes we bring everybody together. Like if I bring my whole English department together, it's usually about 40 teachers or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then do they have like time carved out during the week to meet, or is it just like a certain times a month?
We started a new bell schedule on the high school last year and are going to it this year on middle school, where basically my teachers teach 5 periods on, 2 periods on planning. So we do 2 planning periods. One planning is pretty much their own to do with whatever they need to do. The other one we structure a little bit more towards the meeting side of it, where they may meet in, academy or PLC, or alternatively meet in their grade level or department area.
That must be fun in terms of master schedule then, to get everyone's prep
Mandy,
period.
I'll tell you, my master scheduler, Mandy McFadden, this is her 4th year as a high school scheduler, 2nd year as a master scheduler. And she may listen to this, I don't know. So I'm going to give her a huge shout out. She is amazing in figuring out how to do this, because, she's got me who sits there. It's like, I want to make sure that everyone has academy planning or team planning. Okay. All right. Now I want to make sure that everyone has department level planning. All right. We'll figure it out. She does that on the high school side and the middle school side. There's a few other people that touch that work. But it's our master schedule starts in late January. And we're, one of the big wins I had my first year here was their master scheduling process in the past had been pretty bad. And I promised a master done by May in your hand before you go home, and we delivered. And this year we got the master out before the end of April, which was huge.
Yeah. And so if I'm picturing myself as a new teacher coming to your school, and you have a lot of clubs, and you have all these academies, and you have 170 certificated staff. And I could see a new teacher sort of hiding away in their corner and sort of being overwhelmed by all of this. How do you integrate or help a new teacher acclimate to your school when there's just so much going on?
Yeah. So the first thing is we start in the interview process. We really hammer in the interviews, especially for our new teachers that are new to the profession, but also new to the building, that an expectation here is that you ask for help. Like we we do not want you to hide in a classroom and then it'd be December and you'd be like, everything's on fire. Now, granted, we have a lot of structures in place to monitor that so that we know, but it is not a bad thing. It is an expectation and a very good thing when you're new to go ask for help. And we put a couple of things in place to help you do that. The first one is we assign you a mentor, one-on-one. Then we assign you another mentor if you're in one of the programs that you might have to do. Like if you're a CTE teacher and you've got to do the new CTE teacher, we assign you an additional mentor there. Mm-hmm. If you do KTIP, which is our Kentucky Teacher Internship Program, which is, I think, going away this year, then you'll get a mentor there. But you have one that's more of an informal mentor that you can ask hey, when do I get to go to the bathroom or,
right.
What's the best way to approach my AP or this, that, or the other. And then one that's a more formal process. One of my assistant principals on the high school and one of my assistant principals on the middle school also run our new teacher cohort, which has changed a lot over the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. 3 years ago, it was more prescriptive, and what we found was we were throwing way too much at our new teachers. And while we felt like we were giving them tons of support, we were, but it was too many voices. So this last year, we shifted more to a more structured approach through the mentor aspect. We like that, and we're going to improve on that a little bit more next year with a couple of modules throughout the year for them, mm-hmm. but then also more structured time for them to work with their mentor, which is like, all right, this hour here is just you and your mentor, and we're going to put it on the calendar, and you got to do it. So there's no excuses, and come with what you need. So we do that. And what we consider a new teacher here is 0 to 3 years.
Right.
So if you're new to us, like new, you just got your shiny new certificate, you come to us, you're going to be a new teacher cohort for 3 years. That's also if you're come to us from another place, but maybe have a year or two under your belt, you're still considered new. We also include anyone who has been brought into the building, whether or not they have 5 years, 20 years, 30 years, they got to do the year of new teacher cohort as well.
Just to get acclimated to the school culture.
Yeah. And then we also find too that, like if I pick up a 17-year veteran and put him in the new teacher cohort with mostly newer people, that 17-year veteran by November, December is being one of the facilitators for it. And they're imparting knowledge there, and it builds some collegiality and stuff like that. So,
mm-hmm. So when you're in the interview process, knowing the culture of your school, what are some qualities that you definitely look for that tell you that this person is going to succeed in your school?
The first one I'm looking for is I want a sense on whether or not they truly and honestly care about kids, or if this is just a job. And I know that's very hard to quantify, but I think after a while of interviewing people, you kind of hone your gut senses on that. Mm-hmm. Let's see, I'm over 130 hires now in the past 3 years. We went from hiring 79 the first year to 49 the second year. And right now I have 7 vacancies. So we're seeing a nice change in that trend. People are staying and want to work here. Mm-hmm. But we've done just a ton of interviews over the past couple of years. And the first thing I'm looking for, and I want to hear, and I want to hear some experience connected to it. Show me that you care about kids. Show me that you're here to build them as better people, not just teach them English or not just teach them math, but also that you're going to build a kid that has a kind heart, and you're going to build a student that you can send out of here that will think 10 years from now, wow, Mr. Fulk was an awesome teacher, and this is why. So that's the first thing I look for. The second one is I look for a richness of experience. And that doesn't necessarily mean teaching experience. I want to see some life experience where you've done some things, taken some risks, done some tough jobs. I love when I get that new teacher that new teacher resume that still has all of the non-education jobs on it. And I see things on there like I work construction, or, I work double shifts at UPS on nights, mm-hmm. because I know that they're going to come in with a richness of experience where they don't just have the education lens on. I'm a big fan of second career folks, just being upfront. I think, and what I've seen over the years is they come with that richness of life experience that it tends to lend itself to a better understanding in the classroom. That being said, we don't give preference to them. I just personally, I think a lot of times they bring a richness to it. And then the last thing I look for is not necessarily pedagogical skills, because we can teach that. I need to see content knowledge. Like if I am interviewing an English teacher and I ask, what was the last book you read? They better be able to answer Johnny quick, and then tell me something about that book, because you're an English teacher, you read. I taught English. We're all readers. Tell me about the last thing you read and why it was important to you. And it doesn't have to be a textbook. Like, what was the last thing you picked up? So that richness of content experience is important.
Let's pretend like I'm sitting on the interview today. I'm applying for, let's say, a 7th grade English position, because that's what I teach. Are you ready for this mock interview part? Yeah. Okay. I'm kind of nervous, but all right, let's do this.
All right. The first question, and we ask every applicant this, what do you know about our school?
I know that you are a 6 through 12 school in Kentucky. I know that, and you've told me this, but you have a lot of different academies in your school. One of them that during my research that sort of caught my eye was that you also have a freshman seminar course, which I think that they definitely need going into the high school side, sort of transitioning them over there. From also looking at the Twitter accounts for you and for your school, I know that there is a lot of diversity. I see a lot of praising kids and highlighting, student and staff achievements, which I think is really important to a positive school culture.
Awesome. All right, next question I've got for you. What's more important to education and the success of our students, tradition or innovation? And defend your answer.
I definitely think that innovation is more important, and not that I'm definitely one to always buck tradition, because I think it's good to honor the work that people have done in the past. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with tradition, as long as you're not just doing things because we've always done it this way. So in many ways, I like to take things that we've traditionally done, like the way that we teach reading and writing, and innovate it. So by innovating, meaning changing it to meet the needs of the students that are currently in front of you every single year. So I have a way that I teach reading and writing. I have a certain way that I teach the writing process, but I don't teach it the same way every year, because technology changes. The needs of my student changes. One year I'll have all accelerated students, and the next year I'll have 50% students with IEPs. And so I have to innovate and adjust to the needs of my students so that I can meet them where they're at and bring them up to where they can be. So they're individual potential, not where I need them to be, but the best that they can be personally.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Following up to that one, what perspectives outside of a Euro-centric curriculum can you bring to our classrooms?
At my particular school that I teach at, we have a really diverse population, and we have a large population of Filipino students, and I'm a Filipina, and I do bring that in to connect with those students, because the majority of the students in my school are Hispanic, and we're in a mainly Hispanic community, and there's a lot for them to draw upon and for them to relate to. But, with the Asian culture in particular, we're sort of this model minority where there's these expectations of us. And that's something that I try to take the pressure off of those students. And I joke with them about, things that are sort of individual to or unique to our culture, to make them at ease and let them know that I don't have unreasonable expectations of them. I just want them to do their best. So I try to bring them my own experience and also what I know about the Hispanic culture, and I employ them to help me, like, how do you say this in Spanish? Or I don't think I'm pronouncing this right. And they help me out with that. So I try to find opportunities to both relate to them, but also let them be a little more the teacher and I'm the student, because they actually really appreciate that.
Can you give me some specific examples in an ELA classroom of literature that you would bring in from a non-Eurocentric perspective?
Sure. I do a lot of short stories as opposed to novels. And there's a particular author, Sandra Cisneros, and she's a Hispanic author. And whether they are Hispanic or they're Asian or Caucasian, all of the students, they can relate to the stories of these kids who are in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade and what they're struggling with. But then it also honors the Hispanic culture in her stories because there's references. She uses actual, Spanish words in there. And then it's kind of fun in class because I'll say, well, what is that? I don't know what that is. And so then our Hispanic students will explain to everyone else what that means. And you can see the pride that they get from being able to talk about that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Coming to us, 17 years of experience. What specific supports are you going to need to be successful? Are you going to need to be successful in our building?
I'm definitely going to need a strong PLC, meaning subject and grade specific PLC team. I really believe in working collaboratively with my team, not just so that I can tell them what I think we should do, but because I love to bounce ideas off of them. And I like to find different ways to teach the content. So I definitely want to be able to work with these people in there. So just a strong team. Also, I do tend to like to teach the classes that have a larger population of, I'd say special ed in terms of students with IEPs that are mainstreamed in the classes. I really like to work with those students. And so I'd want to be able to access a strong special ed team as well, who will be able to help me work with the parents, figure out what kind of accommodations or modifications I need to make for the students to help those students be successful.
Okay. All right. The last question I have is a two-parter.
Okay.
What are your expectations of a team or PLC, and how do you uphold your own expectations with your team and PLC?
So a large part of working well with the PLC is being able to compromise, and even though we feel that we're right, being able to see from another teacher's perspective. So I expect all of us to come in open-minded enough to hear each other out and then maybe give our own spin on a topic or a particular lesson without getting defensive or being or attacking another teacher. So I've been in experiences where it's been like that, and my current PLC right now, we work really well together because we all approach teaching the same standard or even teaching the same text a little bit differently. And I love the diversity of that because I get ideas from other teachers. What was the second part of the question?
How do you uphold your own expectations with your team and PLC?
Okay, so before that one, the other expectation that I have for a PLC is that everyone comes prepared. So we set the agenda for the next meeting and everyone comes knowing what they're going to contribute to the meeting and not just showing up and saying, what are we doing? Or what are you guys teaching this week? So I expect that they're going to come with something to contribute so that we're not just wasting time talking about our kids. I mean, I know there's always a little bit of that before it starts, but I want them to come and not waste our time. So I definitely uphold my end in that before we meet together as a PLC, I'll definitely have some notes that that apply to the agenda so that I'm prepared. If we're talking about, we want to teach becoming Nomi Leon, how are you teaching, theme on this one, then I'll have some resources ready to talk about when we're going to be talking about theme. I'm there on time, and I am collegial, and if someone we joke around at the same time during a meeting, but for the most part, I'm there to get to work so that we can all leave on time and get something out of the meeting.
Good deal. Those are my 5.
So any feedback?
Yeah, sure. So okay. I think you killed the, I guess it was my third question about perspectives outside of the Euro-centric curriculum. I like specifically being able to name the authors and then how you use that to highlight students in the classroom. Like that was a good answer. I would have probably put a smiley face on my interview pad on that one. The last one there. So I asked that one a lot of experienced teachers. So typically in the interview process, we're going to have their peers are part of the interview panel, and they need to hear what that person expects from their team in PLC. But they also need to hear, all right, how are you going to do your own expectations? And what I heard was, you expect compromise, open-mindedness, not being defensive or not attacked, and then the underscoring and being prepared and contributing. So I thought you did a good job answering that one.
Oh, good.
You didn't give an example about the open-minded or defensive, not attacking part, but that's okay. That's a hard one. I don't necessarily know if that gives good to give a specific example to. The other ones you did really well on. The tradition or innovation question, I like the answer there. That was good. We'll usually throw in a couple philosophical questions like that, just because I want to see how someone thinks. Are they looking at this as the art and science of teaching? Hopefully,
right.
And I don't think there's a right answer to that, because I think you can have a good way to look at the traditional way we do education and be able to make that a relevant answer. I lend more towards the innovation side, but I also want to hear like what innovation means. Does innovation always mean change to the applicant, or does innovation mean something more specific? And I think the spin you took on that and how you use innovation to adapt specifically the curriculum that you're teaching from year to year and match that more towards the individual student. I thought that was a really, really strong answer there. That was good. The specific supports coming into the building, that one I really like for new teachers, because I want to hear that they've got some growth mindset. I want to hear that they're going to ask for help. What I don't want to hear is, well, I feel pretty good. I just need somebody to give me a mentor and I'll be okay. Like, no, I don't. That's not good. From an experienced teacher, you hit the two things I want to hear every time, which is I want a strong PLC. I want a strong grade level. Like, because new teachers, they know the veteran teachers know that they don't want to come into an environment where nobody's pulling their weight. They want to know coming in that they're going to be respected for the fact that they've got, 15 years in the profession, and that they're going to get to work and they're not going to have to play, oh, look, Becky over there didn't come with her data this time,
Yeah.
And just absolutely hate that. So that's good. Yeah, you really killed that one. But yeah, no, it was good. I'd probably hire you.
Oh, yay. I just think that new teachers, they get so nervous. Well, actually, probably any teacher going to an interview, they get so nervous about what they're going to be asked and not being able to think on the fly. And I think that this will help them. They won't necessarily get the exact same questions from every principal, obviously, but a lot of the questions that I received on these interviews, they're around the same types of themes, and a lot of them are, how are you with your team? How are you with students and being, student-centered, meeting the needs of the students? Questions along those lines and philosophy. So I think they need to be able to articulate all of that right away at a moment's notice. And I think that that'll help them be prepared for the interview.
Yeah. And I think one of the things too, that new teacher in that interview should not be afraid of saying, I don't really know the answer to that, but here's what I do know, and I want to know more. Like, for me, I know that's a huge one. Like, we interviewed a lady this morning who's new to the profession, and we asked her a question about standards-based grading, and her answer was very minimal. And she said, I really, that's about all I know. And I'm like, okay, well then ask me some questions about it that spark your curiosity. And she had just killer questions. Like, they were awesome. And we're probably going to end up extending her an offer.
Oh, nice.
Later today, just because, one of the things my committee was really impressed with, they were like, she's got an inquisitive mind. She's got a good growth mindset about her. Like, we can support her into being a rock star teacher. She has all the stuff she needs to come in. We can teach her some of the skill stuff. Like, I firmly believe I probably don't have anyone on staff that can teach someone to like kids. So if you can't do that, then you probably don't need to be here. But all that stuff, like, we can teach you how to think pair share. We can teach you how to do Google Classroom. We can teach you all of that skill stuff. So I don't really care if you can do that coming in if you're new. Like, I want to see the stuff that we can't teach. Do you have that strong foundation to be an awesome educator?
But how about for teachers who are a little bit more meek or introverted? Do they have a chance to get a job if they can't be a little more outgoing, or do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. So one of the mistakes I made early in my career was when interviewing people, I found myself putting a premium to the more outgoing people. And I think I passed on some really good applicants when I was a younger principal because of that. So I really, really, really try to, from my personal perspective in an interview process, is to listen to the meat of it and not necessarily the presentation of it. That being said, one of the things I absolutely cannot stand is coming into an interview in casual wear. Like, that's a presentation piece everybody's got to knock out of the park. Like, just take the time to put on something, appropriate for an interview. But past that, if you're not super outgoing, that has been something I've had to be mindful of for myself over the years, is that, they could be nervous as heck and they might be a rock star and outgoing in the classroom, but they're sitting in front of a firing squad of 10 people they've never met being asked highly technical questions. So let's instead make sure that we pay attention to the meat of what they're saying and the quality of their responses. So I don't, the presentation portion of it, I'm not huge on, not as much as I have been in the past. So yes, absolutely. I think someone more meek and reserved has an excellent opportunity to get picked up by us.
Do you just try to elicit more from them if they don't give you very involved answers, so that you can, because you can tell that they're nervous?
Yeah. So, good hiring practices that we ask every interview, every person that we interview, every candidate, the same questions. However, it's perfectly appropriate to ask follow-up questions, and those follow-up questions can be unique to the applicant. So if I ask, can you give me some, what perspectives outside of a Euro-centric curriculum will you bring into your classroom? And it's kind of sparse, but there's some more there. All right, you're going to teach ELA. Tell me some specific titles that you would bring in. Tell me some specific authors. And then that gives them an opportunity. It prompts them and go, okay, well, I've got these 5 people that I like. Here's what I would bring in. And then we also have gotten into the habit now with new folks. We tell them before the interview starts, we realize you're new. Like, we'll tell you not to be nervous, but please don't be nervous. We realize you're new, and you're probably, we approach this as you are new to this. And so we're not expecting perfection.
Right. Thank you so much for giving me your time today. I really enjoyed this interview, and I know that my listeners are going to get so much out of it. If they're interested in learning more about your school, where can they find out more information?
Yeah, so you can go to our website. It's just Google Marion C. Moore School. I think it's www.mooremustangs.com. The best place to look for us is Twitter. We do a lot on Twitter at More Mustangs, and then at Rob Fulk, Fulk. And then we have about 80 different accounts. We may be over 100 now of school-specific stuff on Twitter. We do some stuff on Instagram, and we do YouTube as well. Yeah, absolutely. And you can always shoot me an email. It's rob.fulk@jefferson.kyschools.us. It's on the website. Not hard to find. I like giving back as much as I can to the profession. I want to thank you for this opportunity. This was really cool. I've never been asked to do a podcast before. And when I kicked it up the food chain to my boss, she was like, "Oh, that's so cool. Like, this is exciting." I was like, yeah, I know, right? I mean, it's like, it feels really cool. So thank you for that opportunity. I really appreciate this resource that you've done. We're actually we were talking about it the other day. We're going to include it in our new teacher cohort and point them towards this as a resource they need to look at.
Oh, thank you. One more thing that I wanted to ask, since you have so many accounts from different teachers, do you guys have like a common hashtag that you use that people can search?
Absolutely. Hashtag no more, KNOWMOORE. We built that hashtag a couple years ago because we felt the community didn't know anything about our building other than the negative stuff that was out there, and we wanted them to know more about our kids.
I like the play on words on there. That's awesome. So thank you again, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. That was awesome.
So there you have it. My awesome conversation with Rob, and I have a few takeaways that I wanted to share with you today. First of all, as a new teacher, you're going to want to ask for help. And this goes with any school for any new teacher. I know it can be hard, and I know that sometimes you feel like you're bugging other people, but honestly, the only way that you're going to get what you need those first few years is to ask for help. Also, when you're interviewing, try to give specific examples as much as possible. Don't just use educational jargon. Try to think of a situation that happened to you or a possible situation and how you would have handled it. And I'm pretty sure that even student teaching experience or observations would also count. If you don't know the answer to something, admit it. Admit that you don't know, but you want to know more. And be ready to ask questions about it, but don't pretend that you know when you don't. Now, in terms of Rob's school and the culture, something that really struck me when I was talking to Rob is how he said that poverty looks different depending on where you come from, whether it be in a rural or urban area, but poverty is poverty, and the effects can be pretty universal, especially on students. Also, secondary schools should provide multiple pathways for the differing needs and interests of students. And this one was big for me because I really believe that students should have multiple pathways to a career, not just college. So learning a trade is just as important and worthy of respect as a college degree. So I hope that you did enjoy the episode today. If you want to know more about Rob and what's going on at his school, as well as the questions that he asked me, you can go to teachersneedteachers.com/12. And also you can come over to my Facebook group, which is Teachers Need Teachers, if you want to further the conversation that Rob and I had. But also, don't go just yet. I would love to know what you think of this series so far. We're a few episodes in. So if you could go over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review, I'd really appreciate that. And it'll help me know how I can improve this series or just this podcast in general to make it more useful for you. And as always, if you have any suggestions or want to be a guest, go ahead and shoot me an email at kim@teachersneedteachers.com. Have a fabulous day.
Thanks for listening to the Teachers Need Teachers podcast. Love this episode? Head over to Apple Podcast or Google Play to subscribe, rate, and leave a review.